Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode. My name is Dana Mantilia, and today my guest is Ken Muir. Muir? Am I saying that right?
Muir.
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 Muir. Welcome, Ken. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me back. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you coming back. So today we have a very important topic that cannot be discussed enough, and it is security awareness training. So before we get into that, is there anything that you want to share before, or we want to just dive right into the questions?
No, I guess I just wanted to say I've been in this industry almost 30 years. So, you see a few things, learn a few things. And so I'm always happy to share my experiences on platforms like this. So,
Good, good, good. All right, so we'll dive right in. Okay, so first question. So what kind of training should I be looking forward to incorporate into my organization? Because there's a lot of options out there.
yeah. So, first of all, the simple answer is you need to incorporate cybersecurity awareness training into your corporation. It's absolutely vital that you include this as part of a security practice in an organization because I always used to joke about this in the past, where whenever I did, in-person speaking engagements, the cybersecurity community is like a secret society. They come up with all these grandiose plans as to what they're going to do for security, but then they don't tell anybody about what they're doing.
Mhm.
And so what ends up happening is you get people that make mistakes, they get fooled into doing things. It's like, security gets upset, but really they're the ones that's creating this because it really needs to be a part of the program is to train people to be able to identify these risks. Because it's not even just things like email. Part of my presentations that I do, for instance, one of the things I show people is an account that I have online that gives information about potentially hackable organizations on the internet. Being able to get easy access to their organizations is really that simple. But the thing is that some of that information that's used is used to trick people into doing things that they're not supposed to do. As an example, like I'm able to find the usernames and email addresses of people whose information is actually inside the network, but is exposed externally. And I can use that information to call somebody and say, hey, this is John from security. We got an issue here. Can you help me with it? And that's how it starts. And before you know it, somebody has breached your network, unbeknownst to anybody else in the organization, including the person that was targeted as well. Hence the reason why we end up with a lot of phishing-based breaches. So it's absolutely vital that people incorporate this into their organizations.
And you know what? You're absolutely right. It's got to go beyond phishing because I always say it's easier to trick an employee than it is to hack into a computer system. So
That's right.
that's what they're doing. And just exactly what you said. If you call somebody up and you sound like you know what you're talking about and you have enough information that the person would say, oh, okay, well, they must know. They must be on the inside. They have all this stuff. So that's not good.
Absolutely.
Oh, boy. All right. So we need to do it. How often should we do it? Because this is another thing, too. I think sometimes people that do have some kind of training in place, it's once a year and it's like, whew, okay, whew, thank God that's done. We'll see you next year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, actually, because the doctrine is that it's recommended to do this at least once a year. That's sort of the overriding understanding in the industry. But the reality is that because these threats evolve all the time, training should be done on a much more frequent basis. Now, one of the things that I've heard organizations tell me is that it's information training overload for employees. So instead of maybe running a full library of training on a monthly basis, to maybe break it up over a 12-month period where you're covering different topics, and so it keeps it interesting. So that way they're not sort of sitting there, thinking, oh, I got to do this all over again every month, because it becomes a drain, and people start skipping things and they don't really pay attention, and then they may not even do it at all. So, and then the metrics that you get from it are not really very useful. So breaking it up over a much more frequent period is definitely advisable.
Yeah, that makes sense. And keeping it a little bit different, entertaining, or somehow people are going to want to watch it. And then I think the biggest thing is I think everybody just needs a reminder once in a while because we get so busy. And I think that we act differently online than we do face to face. And for whatever
Absolutely.
reason, maybe because there's fewer sentences that we can use. I just think that, we're moving too fast and we're just going through things and giving away things that maybe if somebody came up to you and said to you face to face, you would be like, why would I give you that information? But because it's online, it just seems for whatever reason people are more apt to.
Yeah, it is. It's a constant reminder that there is a threat out there. I've seen successes in doing security awareness training where, because the employees feel now part of that security program, they're much more likely to alert the appropriate group within the organization as to a potential breach, hack, social engineering, something that looks very suspicious. Because you're right. I mean, people get very busy. Some of us have multiple email accounts with hundreds of emails in them. It's really tough to stay on top of that. And then the other thing, of course, is the psychological thing. These guys are smart. They know your busy periods. Like if I'm going to perpetrate social engineering with somebody in finance, for instance, I'm going to wait till quarter end, right? When everything is just mad and stuff has to be done really quickly and there's a deadline to get things done. That's exactly when you assert yourself into that as a bad guy.
Mm-hmm. All right. So here's another thing. So who should be included in this? I think this is one thing that people don't really realize, the scope of who really needs to be involved in this.
Yeah. So this shouldn't be limited to just employees. There is a requirement really where every level of the organization should be included in some kind of training. Now, I would suggest that obviously the material that goes through most employees should also be a part of maybe upper management, senior management, executives, boards, and that kind of thing. But they also need more targeted security training. They need things that are more related to what the risks are to the business, as opposed to the risks related to the individual. Obviously, the risk to the individual obviously can perpetrate to other things, but the higher ups really need to understand how this threatens their business entirely, because there's tons of evidence of businesses that have failed because of massive data breaches that they simply couldn't recover from. And so, for an employee, if the rule is 3 times and you're out, it's affecting that one employee. But for a business, it's only 1 time and you're out.
Are you having a hard time finding new customers? A lot of folks just like you in the IT and cybersecurity space are in the same situation. And they have embraced a new opportunity to get new clients. They're doing this by growing their online presence and maximizing the power of LinkedIn. How, you ask? I have a tried and tested method called my Cyber Social Program. I myself have been on LinkedIn and now have over 3.5 million LinkedIn views, and over on YouTube, I have over 750,000 video views. So I can show you exactly how I have done that so that you can promote your organization and become the authority in your industry. And the best part is, I've done all of this organically without one paid ad. You don't need to waste your money over on Google with pay-per-click ads. Now's the time to establish yourself. Look around. The competition isn't doing it. This is your time to shine online before they do. So if you're ready to start your online journey and future-proof your business, please, down below, click the link and schedule a time for us to have a 45-minute call where I can review the exact methodology of the Cyber Social Program. You can also click below to see some of my masterclasses, which will give you quick little snippets of a couple of things you can do right away on LinkedIn that will help with your profile. I hope to see you and hear from you soon.
For lots of small businesses. So there is a difference between how you target these different levels of the organization.
And I also think too, if you do have a data breach and your clients say, well, what were you doing to protect our information beforehand? And you look at them and you say, well, nothing. That's not, at least you can say, well, we have training, we have this, we have that. We really made an effort versus no, we just thought it was protected.
It is. And that's one of the things that I cover when I do tabletop exercises around cybersecurity, is that response is what do we say? How do we handle these things? One of my favorites that I kept reading over and over is, we've been the subject of a very sophisticated attack, and we've now spending all kinds of money, open checkbook, and bringing in the most expensive security companies to help us fix this. What that tells people like me in the community is that you've done nothing, and now you're paying whatever it costs to get you to where you should have been before. So the messaging is really, really important, actually, but it needs to include exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. So what do we see in terms of effectiveness of the training?
So, I mean, from my understanding, with both personal experiences as well as things I've heard and read, usually we're never going to get to 100%. That's the when we say 100%, meaning that the training doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden 100% of employees are going to be completely bulletproof against some kind of a phishing attack. There's always going to be a scenario where somebody will get tricked and fooled into these things. But security awareness training is just like everything else that we do. This is always an exercise in risk reduction. That's what the goal is risk reduction. The more areas that you can reduce corporate risk, organizational risk, enterprise risk, that's really what the objective is. So if your first attempt at doing awareness training and scoring that training and find that 75% of people clicked on links that they're not supposed to, then if you're getting that down to the 20 or 25% that I see that's pretty average on there, that's a massive risk reduction.
Mm-hmm.
That means you can now focus on those last 20% to figure out, what is the issue? Why is it that people still are clicking on phishing links when they're not supposed to? So that's really what the goal of it is to try to reduce the risk in the organization in every means possible, including the awareness training.
That's a good way to look at it, risk reduction. Because I haven't really heard that term used too much. And that's the perfect way, because a business owner can identify with that, saying, okay, well, what do we do? We're reducing the risk. We're not completely getting rid of it. There's still going to be some there, but what can we do to reduce it? And I really like that you mentioned that. That's a good one. I'm going to repeat that one again.
No, you should actually, because it's like a lot of companies that I deal with when they've had a ransomware breach, for instance, and it's typical that they don't have any logs. They haven't collected anything from any systems. The forensics is really an impossibility because you need logs and information. You need data in order to study, potentially what happened and stuff. But when you don't have that information, usually, really, like, it's always the same culprits. And so, blaming an individual because they clicked on a link and it resulted in ransomware is one aspect of it. But then, I never really hear people asking the question, well, how did that person even get that link in the first place? Don't you have security tools in place that are supposed to stop these things? Well, yeah. Well, why did that happen? Well, and then so you start working backwards and you start realizing there's a whole chain of events that actually led to that situation in the first place. Like, you have anti-spam, but the anti-spam is only good at the desktop level. Because, as an example, like, if you went to a site that had malware on it, that site's encrypted. We do have tools to do decryption to be able to look at the payloads that come in and out of the communications. Most people don't have that turned on. And even when they do, they're not looking for malware. So really, you're looking at the individual as being the last line of defense. That's what you really need to understand, is they are literally the last line of defense. And so if you don't have proper training, don't have proper tools, don't have proper processes in place, don't have an ability to respond in a way that you need to in order to mitigate that, and then subsequently the PR that goes behind that to make sure you're covering this off properly. There's a whole series of events, and it's usually the same things over and over and over again. There aren't too many variables when it comes to being breached by something like ransomware or even any other malware.
So this is something that as always needs a lot more attention than it ever gets. So how does this affect incident response plans?
Right. So I'm not saying generally people don't understand this, but it's just to really reinforce the point that in the tabletop exercises that I conduct, one of the things that I talk about, apart from insurance and legal and PR and all the other things that are part of something like this, one of the things that I see is generally overlooked is how do you, when you're dealing with an incident, so even if you have the perfect plan, you've tested it all and everything's great, one of the things that you need to make sure is that you have client confidentiality as part of that process, meaning that in the event of a breach, you need to call your lawyer, whoever it is that you're looking at, to help you in being able to manage the situation. Part of the benefit of that is that you're getting client confidentiality, which means that all of communications, whether it's digital or verbal, are covered by client confidentiality. This helps you to manage the message, the messaging. This helps you to control that. But what a lot of organizations don't understand is that anything that's outside of that can become public knowledge and could be enforceable through subpoena. This would include things like, John sitting in his desk and he suddenly sees his screen go red and it's got ransomware written on it, and he starts clicking away on his camera and sending out to social media. Hey, you never guess what happened to us? Oh, it's really bad. Blah blah blah. Next thing you know, the whole world knows about it. This is not a scenario that a company wants to get themselves involved in, because they lose control of the messaging, because it may become a nothing situation, meaning that the company had robust response procedures and they did everything that they were supposed to do. It became nothing. But out in the social media world, everybody's left to decide for themselves what they think the actual issue is. So it's not really good way. So making sure that individuals within your organization are also trained on good, proper hygiene when it comes to responses, for incident responses, and making sure that they're not messaging outside of the organization. That needs to also be a part of the training as well. And I don't see that typically happening. So awareness training needs to go up. They need to be included as part of that incident response plan. It really needs to be on a frequent basis. And as policies are updated, those things need to be communicated as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. They do have to be updated, because things are always changing, and there's a lot of people that don't update that at all. So that's an important thing, updating that. And also, if you don't tell your employees what to do and something happens, it's going to be like the Wild West. So don't be surprised.
It is. You have to really set people up to be successful, right? And if you don't, then you're gonna feel the consequences of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So what would you say can improve the effectiveness of this training?
So one of the things that is really important is that training really needs to be suited for the actual organization, the type of industry that they're in. They can use, probably the majority of the training could potentially be the same across any organization type, but there are very specific things for very specific industries that should also be incorporated as part of the training as well, because your interaction with your vendors, customers, partners, other B2B organizations that you're doing business with, there's a very specific way that you operate with those organizations, and so that really needs to be incorporated as part of that. Like if you're in, you could be in the financial industry actually, because they're one of the most heavily targeted organizations around right now, along with healthcare. But the way you handle transactions, for instance, and that wouldn't be the same as if you were a flower shop, as an example, or the differences between these types of organizations have to be factored in as part of your awareness training. So when you are looking for awareness training modules or applications that are online, you need to also look at how flexible are these awareness training programs. Are they just cookie cutter, one size fits all for everybody, or is it something more sophisticated that allows you to be able to customize to your particular organization? So those things are really, really important when you start into this. Or it could be that you just start off with a plain Jane training program, and then develop that program into something that's more specific. Like, don't spend 6 to 12 months trying to figure out the best solution. Just start with something that's very inexpensive to get onto nowadays, and just evolve your program to fit your business better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Start doing something, and then, like you said, you can tailor it to your specific needs and industry and all that kind of stuff. Well, this was really, really helpful. Thank you so much, Ken, for all of your insight, and thank you for coming back again. We hope to have you on again if you'd like. Oh,
absolutely. I'm always happy to share experiences. We do a lot of work with partners and their customers and stuff. And one of the things that I always tell people is it's kind of pointless having all this experience in the industry if you don't have a way to share it. So
that's what we're trying to do here. That's exactly right. Yes. Well, thank you very much, Ken, and thank you everybody for watching. And until the next episode, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.